Good morning, Yvette. Thank you so much for giving up your precious time. I know this is, like you've got so many things to do and the polls are getting ready for some action. How are things going?
Yeah, good. Good to be here this morning. I think always nice to take time out of the training environment, but so pleased with our Pulse group. They've worked really hard over that lockdown period and they've actually come back better than before. So looking forward to it. I feel really confident in them and I'm really proud of the work they've done.
I think the whole of New Zealand can't wait for netball to start,
Yeah,
to be quite honest.
it's going to be
Right.
weird playing in front of an empty crowd, but it's still good to be playing.
I know. At least we'll be able to watch you guys on telly. That'd be great.
Yell loud.
Um, this morning's Kōrero is more about mental skills. Run us through your start of your coaching journey to where you are now.
Yeah, so I actually started as when I was teaching. So uh, I guess there's an expectation when you're teaching that you're involved in coaching teams. So even when I was at Teachers College, I started coaching at 17 and quite enjoyed it. But, in the end, we're still playing. So spent lots of time with school teams and rep teams, have coached future ferns, intermediate, all sorts of age groups, all the way through, obviously, to senior players. So I, in 2003, finished playing and then have just been full-time coaching since then. So that's probably the most interesting transition, I think, when you go from playing and coaching and realise you can't get out there and fix everything and have to be able to get that message across. So it's you've done the player coach thing and all sorts of bits and pieces along the way, but it goes really fast.
What's your favourite part of being a coach?
Being in a team. I really enjoy being around the people, and I guess for me the specifics of that, really looking at planning the detail around a campaign and planning what that will look like, planning how you can make the most of the players that you've got and working a plan that brings the best out of them. I think I enjoy those elements, but being around a team environment I really enjoy.
What do you reckon are the most challenging parts about being a coach?
Yeah, I think it's probably the biggest piece is, again, the people. They're making sure that they're getting what they need out of the experience, making sure that you find that balance and remembering for some parts of coaching it's about performance and other parts it's about participation. And so finding that balance that they can't learn unless they get a go, but sometimes they've got to be ready to have a go. And so I think finding that balance around them as people on the court's important, but also just trying to understand them and how they react and respond to situations as people is also the challenge, but the really exciting part as well.
I know you're part of a school team and then obviously the polls. What is the difference? How does your coaching differ between the two?
Yeah, I think, and it's evolved over time. I think, you often believe that senior players will know what they need to do and therefore it makes it easier. But I actually think in lots of ways, that's not always the case. They still need, guidance. They have sometimes habits that are really hard to change as senior players. And so sometimes that's even more challenging, whereas younger players are very open and you see massive growth really quickly. So you get lots of, building really fast. With senior players, you see a lot more subtlety, but they certainly do grow and they tend to grow across position rather than necessarily within it. But I think actually we often underestimate young players and their capacity to analyse, to really think deeply about performance and to really want to grow and improve is far greater than we often give them credit for. So I don't see there's a huge amount. When I reflect on it, I would say faster. So basics done at pace and under pressure just changes. So there's a different pace and a different pressure. And at a senior level, they manage to do that far more consistently. So, a school player, sometimes one day you'll turn up and you'll go, yeah, we've nailed it. We can tick that off. And you turn up next time and they're like, did we cover this? You're like, wow, okay, here we go. So retention may not be quite so good, but certainly think they've got massive potential.
How do you handle parents' influence, or are there a lot of parents' influence with your school team?
Yeah, look, I think it varies. I've been really fortunate to have very supportive parents across all programs, and I think that's really importantly led by strong planning. So putting in place really good mechanisms so they can find their part. I think the other really critical piece is being really clear and having lots of strong communications with players themselves, because parents only get involved if players get upset and have to, share that with their parents. So certainly, as a parent, I'm certainly competitive. I want my daughter to do well, but I have a respect for the position of a coach, and I know her well enough that that's not always an easy place for a coach to be either. So I get that they want the best for their own daughters, but I think there's a real challenge in finding ways to engage them. And most importantly, through really strong planning and good communication, I think that alleviates pieces really quickly.
How important do you think is mental skills to the younger players and then to the older players?
Yeah, I think it's huge. When you think about the capacity of a really promising player, generally they've got within them that mental edge. So you see it either in a training environment, they're prepared to stay and do a little bit more. They're either super competitive, which can be translated sometimes as a negative, but that's a mental edge in itself, that they can show a real commitment. They generally show a lot more resilience and grit in times of challenge. And so I think we see it in different ways. And often the challenge is when we label it, they get all scared about it and think that, there's something wrong with them. So I think it's trying to find that balance between just them learning to hang tough a little bit, learn a bit more about themselves when things are challenging, and that can be around selection or around training or around performance, that there's mental skills in that space, and to think about how they prepare for performance. And that can be, do they pack their bag the night before? Have they thought about their preparation from a nutrition perspective? And I think there's mental skills in all of the basic preparation for a performance, as opposed to having to sit down and as they get more involved, they may find imagery and other forms of specific skills really useful. But I think what you'll find when you dig deep, a lot of those players practice it anyway in the environment. They're thinking about it through a shooting technique, or seeing themselves being really successful, or lots of that type of thing happens naturally for our very best athletes. So yeah, I think the key is it is important and it can't be underestimated, but people tend to come to it when they're ready.
How do you teach mental skills? Because that is fascinating to me, because I'm like, it is something, when you do imagery or self-talk and those kind of things, it's things that you have to learn. And as a person, you have to be accepting of that. You can't really force it on an athlete, can you?
No, I agree. I think it is a part of a player's evolving at different pace, and when they're ready for it, they'll either get to a point where they've had a block in terms of either a technique or from a performance perspective, or it could be an opponent, or at a certain level where they feel there's something, it's just not as easy as it used to be, and therefore it's something that they may tap into. But I think we can use it as coaches on a daily basis, just in terms of questioning techniques, starting to have them think a little bit about why they're doing what they're doing. As we know, really good athletes look like they do things easily. Their skill acquisition is that much more advanced. And so sometimes they don't break down exactly why they've done that, but often the challenge for them mentally is because they haven't quite understood that without pressure, they've been able to do this somewhat simply. So bringing them back from a skill perspective and physically getting them to feel, rather than making them think, because then they stand still and go, well, this isn't working for me. So I get it that people are quite different and they come to it in different ways, but largely athletes take the kinesthetic. And so physically, they'd rather go through something and have a connection to it, rather than say, can you write down the 3 things you're thinking about? And I'm like, God, really? Thinking about what I'm going to eat next, and thinking about So I do think it's important to try and get them a little bit more engaged in the moment and break down a skill. And before you know it, they start to evolve. But I think people come to it when they're ready, and actually they subtly already have ways in which they're using mental skills in their, we all, every time you go to train, it applies a huge amount of self-talk and, a lot of the ability to mentally push yourself. So it happens quite naturally, and it's allowing that to be the case without them feeling like they're inept. And I think sometimes when we move to mental skills, the athlete thinks, oh, they're doing this because I'm not tough enough, or, they think I'm going to fold under pressure, or I'm inept. And it's not really, it's about advancing and giving them an extension.
So do you use psychologists to help in teaching the players these kind of things?
Yeah, we use, again, a mental skills coach. And I think the approach that I've used in the last few years has been largely around doing it as a group. So we work in a group. For example, pre-season, we would lead into, okay, what are some of our game day routines, and sit down and actually talk about it as a group. And it's not so much to analyse who's got it right and wrong. Actually, they're all quite right in what they're doing. But actually, it's for all of us to understand how people prepare for performance, and that respectfully we're able to say, oh, so-and-so actually really enjoys having time out. They've come to that point where they're quite mad most of the week, but in that last 2 hours, they actually don't want to have an engagement with other people. They want to be left alone. So for us, it's more from a team perspective, understanding each other and what makes us get in the best space for performance. So we use it in a group way. We also have the opportunity for players individually to touch base with the mental skills person, and largely they'll talk about, specific pieces in their performance that they want to improve on. For example, they may have an opponent, it gets really tough, and they're finding themselves in a self-doubt space. So what are some of the key words that they can use to re-engage? And largely her focus to the players is about what are the physical actions that take you to the present. And every time they come up with, 2 or 3 keywords that keep them in the present, which largely about them completing the task in front of them. Because often when we get challenged mentally, we start heading off in different directions, and physically we forget what we're doing. So she tends to, again, continue to help them focus on the physical and being in the present.
That's amazing, because I think by keeping it in a group, players know what makes one another float, and when to give space and when to actually start engaging a little more. So
yeah, I think it's an appreciation, isn't it, of individuals, that we're a team trying to complete a collective task, but individually we've all got to come together. And so what helps us get into the best space, and we're included in that. At times we'll, as coaches, will join that conversation around, look, you may see me do X, I'm not angry with you. I'm just quiet, so they get to know how we're all ticking and what we need in order to get ourselves in the right space to be the best we can on that day. So I found the group piece really helpful, and it takes away, I don't know, sometimes they just think it's this kind of strange activity, to go and talk to somebody. So it removes some of that from the environment, that it's just a good chance to know each other. We've also done work with the New Zealand Police and looked at, again, I've taken it from a decision-making perspective, not to say that they're inept, but how do we continue to be at the top end of our decision-making when we're under the most pressure? And we've found over years that that's been the end of quarters, and we're very aware we've lost a grand final in the last dying minutes. And so we were really aware of the pressure that we came under at that point, along with a number of other aspects that we've continued to work on. But that was a key part that we wanted to take control of. And so putting players under pressure, we've done a little bit of work around personalities. So understanding where we all fit on a continuum under pressure, where we all fit around our values and decisions that we make, really helps us understand and then not get frustrated with people when they respond in a particular way. It's like, well, that's actually their first go-to point. So now how do we find a way to keep, working along the continuum? Otherwise, you get people who are really hyped and they just get really frustrated that some people look like they're, about to go to sleep, and they're like, they need to get into it and they're not concentrating. It's like, whoa, take a breath. So it's having respect for difference, and difference is really important. So respecting that difference actually adds value, doesn't pull us away from each other, but it actually adds value.
How important do you reckon is self-talk for the players? When things aren't going well, and not only self-talk to your, obviously yourself as well, but staying connected?
Huge. That was an area that we felt when we went under pressure. We tried harder, but we tried harder on our own, in our own little bubble, and in the end probably was frustrating the person next to us, because we either tried to help them do their job, and they were then thinking, do you think I can't do my job because you're in my damn way? So having that communication is massive, that we can, and recognizing in people who goes into, fight mode and who goes into flight mode, and what that response looks like. And so they have, part of our group discussion is that they have talked together about, if you see me get to this is a word that really helps me respond. So they know each other's words, that and when they hear it from each other, it's taken as, okay, they've seen something in me. I may not have recognized it in myself, and therefore my teammates are calling me to action at this point. So we've found that, conversation really helpful, and that's aligned us in times of pressure. And generally, we're now confident to call on it a lot earlier, and not wait to be under so much pressure that we've got people calling each other all over the show, that we can, go to someone reasonably quickly, and respectfully they understand that we're trying to help each other out. It's not that we're questioning what they're doing, but we're starting to see signs of challenge. So that's been, I think, really helpful. And I mean, gosh, you can't say enough about the right communication. Huge amount of yelling and flapping is not helpful, but, useful communication at the right time is important. And that only comes when you get to know each other, and when you understand what that collective reason is. So spending that time in a team space is important for us from a mental skills perspective.
How important do you reckon is goal setting, not only as a team, but as individuals? And which one comes first? Do you set the team goals and then the individual goals, or do you set the individual goals and then the team goals?
I think it's almost a bit happening together. So if I think about the process I find works well for us, it starts at contracting. So really important for me to be upfront with each of the players about, one, who we're looking at involving in the roster, what part each person's playing, and therefore what part I need them to play. And that can be around position, what they bring as a person off the court, what they bring from a skill set. So making sure they're really clear about how they fit within our bigger picture, and then within that, what we want to achieve for them as an individual. So it could be around some positional changes. So we're wanting to add a position for them. We're wanting to make sure that they're able to advance from a skill set, and i.e. to then be in a position to be selected for a national program. That's a really important part of what we believe our job is as a franchise. So we'll talk to them about that, talk to them how we see them fitting currently. So a little bit like a ranking, you're currently sitting here for these reasons. These are the things we need to look at from a physical perspective, from a technical perspective, and a tactical. So for me, it starts at that point. That also then requires me to have thought really hard about the big picture of the team. And so to be able to articulate that to them in that contracting phase. So it's eyes wide open. They all know when they agree to be part of our franchise, why, and what part they fit in, and what we're trying to achieve across the board. So the team goals actually never change. The team goal is very clear, that we want to make the grand final. And if we can make a grand final, then we want to win a grand final. And we know that's not that easy. So that, that doesn't change. And I believe that's probably all 6 franchise teams' goals. That's why we're in a high performance space. So then the subtlety comes down to how we work with those individuals in order for them to have absolute confidence in themselves and those around them, that they are there for a reason and they're clear about their goals, and within that they've got the team outcomes clear as well. So I think in a team game it's got to be about individuals and team. We've got to have everybody feeling like there's something in it for them. You know, they're humans at the end of the day. There's got to be something in it for them.
Yeah. So with our community coaches, the four main things we focus on is self-talk, goal setting, imagery, and relaxation. Have you seen some of your players physically doing this during either stressful times or non-stressful times?
Yeah, I think as I've got to know them better and understand them in pressured situations and non-pressured situations, you can see largely through their personality how they respond. And so we see it quite a bit. We'll see, for example, Katrina, very experienced player. You can see her having evolved even over the last 3 to 4 years, where in the past she may have gone to work a whole lot harder and done other people's work. She now works her own job a whole lot harder. I can see her start to link and communicate to one. We talk about left and right. So does my left and right know what's happening next? So we see a huge increase in communication, and hers is less verbal and more eye contact and through doing. We'll then see other people, particularly, you know, the goalkeepers tend to be more, they'll start talking a little bit more. Amelia Rand talks, so we see a huge, her volume goes up in terms of loudness. When she's calling people to action as such, she'll talk a lot more. So, you know, as two of our key leaders, our captain and our vice captain, they respond in quite different ways. But largely, I see them through doing. You see in action, they know it's important. And so their thoughts are, I need to do my job really, really well for the next, 2 to 3 minutes to consolidate. And that's a real shift from looking out. So they'll look in and pick up their role in a much more meaningful way rather than looking out. Whereas often an inexperienced player will look to their left and right for some support or guidance or leadership at that time. And so you see that, subtle change. But they're getting better at reading. For example, Maddie's a development squad player, Silverfern development squad player, first year for us in at wing attack. We know there have been times of pressure, and we saw it in Super Club. We had a conversation about that. She recognises when the pressure comes on, and we saw a massive step up in the tactics match around just holding under the pressure and trusting her skill set. And others see that around her, and we can then run some different centre passes for a little bit to freshen her up. But actually, when you talk to her, she wants the ball more. So that's not about us going in and helping. That's about us going, let's make sure she gets ball contact and re-engages. And similar with shooters, if they haven't shot for a while, they want the ball more, not less. They don't want to not shoot. So, how do we find ways to get it to them quicker, get it in their hands, get it into a shooting position that we know they're feeling more confident and well within their range. So that's part of that team conversation, that unless we understand each other and see response, we don't help each other in the right ways. When we think we're helping, we're actually not helping. So I see it a lot and have started to, it takes time getting to know players. And that for me is why, the grass isn't always greener. Continuity is important. Maintaining your group of people is important. You pick them for a reason, believe in them, back them, keep going back to them, and they'll keep going back to the well for you.
Right, our last question comes from a community coach that is asking, what is one thing you know now about coaching that you wish you knew when you started?
Oh, gosh, every day I think I learn something. It's just hard work. It is really hard work. And I think the thing that I've learnt the most is that you have to be you, and you have to be a consistent you. That's the most important piece. I've had lots of amazing mentors and have had lots of amazing coaches myself that I've admired. And really because of that, I've had positive experiences which have allowed me to be in the game. But in the end, you can only ever be you. People will pick up when you try to be something else, and it doesn't mean you can't evolve. But for me, the challenge is always finding that balance of caring about people, but being really clear about what we need to do. And that's a constant work on for me. And probably when I started, I was, cared probably more about the people, and I didn't really care about results, to be honest. But they actually do matter. And as you move forward, it's finding that balance that, and sometimes you just got to tell them to shush up and get on with doing what you tell them to do. So that's just how it is. But fun is important, but I don't confuse the fun with the job. The job should be fun anyway. So it's not getting too confused about who you are and sticking to it.
Oh, thanks, Yvette. Thank you very much for spending your morning with us. You
Pleasure.
are a fountain of knowledge, and I can't wait to see where your coaching career will take you.